and thank you for joining us for the second installment of Navigating Mentorship, Empowering Tomorrow's Leaders. My name is Matt Piesold. I'm a Labor and Workforce Development Specialist at the University of Missouri Extension, and I serve the Kansas City, Missouri region. For the past couple years, I've been working with my colleagues, Amy Patillo, as well as Carl Bradley, Cheryl Newberry, Aaron Wybe, and Jason Weigel, to develop a mentorship portal and a collection of resources for all Extension professionals. And today I'm proud to introduce Victor Villegas, an award-winning technologist and broadband and digital technologies adoption coordinator at Oregon State University. His passion is helping people learn how to use technology to improve their work, connect with new audiences online, and to improve their lives. As the broadband and digital technologies adoption coordinator, he engages with communities and organizations across Oregon to help them access and use broadband and digital technologies safely and responsibly. Mr. Villegas is engaged in K-12 STEAM outreach and education using drones, robots, music, humor, puppets, poetry, and storytelling to reach underserved and underrepresented youth and to spark their interest in STEAM education and career pathways. As a digital coordinator, he leverages his skills in social media, personal branding, communications, and marketing to help Oregonians position themselves for success. Mr. Villegas is committed to helping students and the next generation of Extension professionals hone their skills and leverage technology to support the development of others. He mentors undergrad students participating in Oregon State University's URSA program and helped establish the Association of Communications Excellence, or ACE. It's a professional mentoring program. He's received the Diversity Multicultural Individual Award from Epson Sigma Pi and Outreach Engagement Vice Provost Award for Excellence from Oregon State University. And I'm going to turn it over to Victor and we will kick it off.
Thank you, Matt. Glad to be here, and good to see some folks I've seen online and at some conferences. So welcome, everyone.
So Victor, I think this time the format's going to be a little bit different. We're going to make it more conversational, kind of a little bit back and forth. So I think we're just going to kick it off. And what is your vision of mentorship, or how do you approach mentorship?
So mentorship can be both formal and informal. I think I have more experience on the informal side of things as a mentee, but more formal as a mentor. So there's different types, different levels. A lot of people think it's, you have a mentor and you follow whatever advice that they're giving you, and you meet with them fairly often. That's more of a formal type, and that's something that we have. When I was at Association for Communication Excellence, we set up that mentorship program. That was much of a more formal. We met once a month at least with our mentee. We had a set list of criteria that we would go over and schedule, but even that was a little bit flexible too, depending on what the mentee needed, right? But there was some formality to it. Then there's the informal, which, like, you might have someone just mentor you on a project, or just for a day, or just off and on. So I have all kinds of mentors, everywhere from, my dad when I was growing up, to bosses, to peers. So the description of mentorship can be very, very wide.
I know sometimes in a formalized setting, your supervisor, your administrator is assigned as your mentor, but in some ways, maybe it's a little bit more like coaching you professionally. So maybe you can explain, what's the difference between mentorship and coaching? Is it the same thing? Are there distinctions between it?
Sure. So coaching is actually, formal coaching is different than mentorship. And I have had that a formal version of that. So when you're doing coaching, you have someone that's actually trying to get stuff out of you. And so you say, what are your strengths and your weaknesses? And they kind of ask you questions and try to have you answer those questions. So it's actually coming from you. They're just coaching that out of you. It's different than coaching like for an athletics where they're telling you what to do. So business coaching is more of them bringing that out, and you're kind of answering your own questions, but they guide you through that process. So with mentoring, it's more of a giving you advice, telling you things. It's not all coming from you, which is as the coaching side of things. With the mentoring, they are actually helping you. You ask questions and they'll give you answers. So that's the biggest difference between formal coaching and mentoring.
When you think about mentoring, do you see it as the model where there's the expert, the mentor, imparting knowledge and wisdom on the mentee, or do you see it as a more personal relationship and more reciprocal where the mentor might also learn something along the way from the mentee and vice versa?
It can go both ways, but I think the ideal one is where you're both learning, and the ideal mentorship relationship. And that's kind of why I got into mentoring myself, because just like the best way of learning is by teaching, so the best way of mentoring is by being a mentor. You learn how to do it better, and I definitely get a lot back from mentees. It's a two-way street for sure for me.
Sure. I think that's the methodology that I subscribe to as well. So looking about the concept of being a mentee, do you have a mentor that has made a specific impact? Maybe highlight one or two that made impact. And if so, what was that impact for you?
Sure. Well, like I said, my dad was very influential when I was growing up. I learned a lot of stuff from him. And uh, professionally, within Extension, I'd say Scott Reed, who used to be our vice provost and Extension director here. He's retired now. Um, he was very much a mentor and helped me a lot to uh, really see my potential and experiment and try different things, and encouraged me, fully supported me. So it wasn't an official mentorship, but yeah, we'd meet several times. And even after he's retired, every once in a while, I'll reach out to him on LinkedIn or whatnot. So he's definitely been a great influence, especially in my extension career.
And that can really make a difference in job satisfaction as well as your professional growth. If you feel like you got someone in your corner that's really advocating for your growth and your role within extension. So
Yeah, and he was at the top, so he
that
can't get
certainly
much
helps.
better than that.
Yep, can't get better than that for sure. So um, when you're looking for a new mentor or you have a new challenge you're trying to overcome, what is your approach when you're trying to seek out a mentor? How do you go about that process?
So I when I'm looking for mentor, I want to look for mentors in certain areas that I want to grow in, right? So is that education? Is that extension? Is that technology? Is that social media? It's just, I might have different mentors for different things that I want to grow in and get more experience in. And so I use LinkedIn a lot to reach out to folks, uh, look for forums, connect with people constantly. Extension Foundation has been a great place for that. I used to be part of Association for Communication Excellence. That was great for mentorship, talking with other communicators and educators. And now I'm with NACDEP. So just really connecting with other peers, but just don't limit yourself to your bubble. Sometimes it's good to get out of your safety zone or your comfort zone and go outside, because sometimes you can learn from people that are just completely opposite from you. So I have a peer mentor that I meet with every often at OSU. He's a researcher, and he's like total opposite from me. And so we help each other in trying to understand people who are opposite from us. So that's a great thing. We push each other.
I know you mentioned NACDEP, and so have you found, presenting at a conference or posters being a great way to extend your network and find new mentors? Has that been a avenue for you? I know you mentioned LinkedIn.
Yeah, sure. Every time I go to conference or even webinars, even these events, I'll go and look up people on LinkedIn and see what they're doing, and if they're doing something similar to what I'm doing or something I want to do, I'll reach out to them. So it's very much proactive. So I don't wait for people to reach out to me. I go out and do that, and I think that's been part of my success.
I think sometimes folks are maybe a little hesitant to, reach out to people, particularly if you never met them, say like on LinkedIn, what is the best way to engage someone you've never met before on LinkedIn? Because often we'll get like solicitations on LinkedIn. Hey, I got a job for you. How do you market yourself in a way so you stand out and just don't get ignored, so to speak?
Well, I usually um, follow people if I don't know them too well. So I start following them and then looking at their post and leaving comments, interacting with them. So when I do connect with them, I'm usually not coming out of the blue.
Uh-huh.
The other thing is I also look at any common connectors that we have. And, if I see that we have like 30, 40, 50 people in common, we probably kind of know each other somehow or have quite a bit in common, at least through our connections. And so it's an easier thing. So, but I'll send a little note saying, "Hey, my name is Victor Villegas. I'm Oregon State University." Just saying that gives you some clout, right? You're not a salesperson, and
Right.
you tell them why you're wanting to connect with them, right? I work in STEAM outreach and engagement, or I work in technology, and I'd like to talk to you a little bit about what you're doing, and not make it all about yourself. Try to see what you can do for them too, right?
Mhm.
And I
Right.
found most people have been very, very open and willing to share their experience with me.
I think sometimes in higher education, we kind of look past LinkedIn as like, more of the business tool, so to speak, and I think that's something that we should take more advantage of, as you clearly demonstrated. So, so what is the best advice that you've received from a mentor? Is there something that stands out, like a couple little nuggets of wisdom or approaches to your job or to mentoring itself?
Sure, and I'll go back to my dad here because he always had nuggets.
Okay.
So one of the ones that he would say quite often is like, if you're feel that you're stuck and nothing's is working or just you feel stuck, he says, change your environment somehow. You got to make a change, some type of change. Sometimes it doesn't even matter what change you do, but just change, whether that's your routine, your location, your job. I mean, try to do something different, because if you're just doing the same thing over and over again, it's not going to change. So, but proactively do that. And sometimes we're very afraid to do change, right? We're scared. Like, do I really take that leap of faith? And I've found more often than not that when I have taken those chances, it's actually worked out better for me. So I've gotten much more comfortable with doing a change, um, more so than other people.
Oh, very good. So when looking at the mentees that you experience today, is there certain types of challenges that you see frequently occurring over and over again with, the younger generation of mentees, or is it really specific to the individual itself, like what they're trying to overcome or to work through or to develop?
I think overall, this goes for both mentees and mentors, is just time.
Mm,
It's really hard to spend time on yourself and do professional development and work on mentoring. Um, and so I try to tie it in with something that they're already doing.
okay.
Is it part of a class? Is it part of a project they're working on? Uh, to make it more easier for them to justify it, right? But I think that that's just kind of part of how we do things, not just in academia, but just in the US overall. We're so driven and wanting to do stuff that we don't stop to really take care of ourselves sometimes and take the time to take classes, take the time to do professional development, take the time to network. We're just doing the work. Uh, but if you do take the time, I think you can increase your efficiency and your productivity and your work. We just have to make sure we're making time for ourselves too.
Since the pandemic, have you found that technology makes it easier to find mentors or to meet, or have you found that it's not effective because you're not in the same space and it's harder to capture one's attention and focus? So, what is your thoughts on technology and mentorship?
Well, I've been online even before the pandemic. So, I found it kind of funny because people said, "Oh, you are now working remotely." It's like I've always been working remotely since I've been with Extension for over 12 years now. The only difference is that I don't commute to the university to work remotely because I would go to the university to
Oh,
work with people off campus remotely. So
sure.
I've always been, it's just the physical location has changed from campus to my home office. But LinkedIn, yes, it's great for networking and the technology that allows it. I've been able to connect with people from all over the world. It's really been quite eye-opening. Um, I do miss being on campus, and I still go back 2, 3 times a month just so to do that in person because that's always optimum. And if I get a chance to go to conference or meet people in person, I'll try to do that. But sometimes that's not possible, and technology allows us to meet with people, Eastern time zone or Australia or Mexico, Canada.
Right. So it definitely expands the scope of what's possible for sure.
Absolutely.
So looking on your role as being a mentor, why have you chosen to be a mentor? There's other things you could be doing with your time. You have a lot of responsibilities. So why are you invested in the next generation?
Well, we talked briefly about um, the mentor gets out of the mentorship just as much as the mentee, if not more sometimes. And so that's one of the reasons. But I have been very fortunate to have had mentors all along my way, great teachers, peers, bosses, and especially for um, groups who are underserved, underrepresented. I'm Latino Hispanic. I know how hard it is for some of us to get in certain positions and certain experiences and access to things. And so I, I had people help me, and so I think it's my responsibility to give back. And so I look for any opportunity that I can do that, especially for underserved, underrepresented youth. So helping them, not having to go through a lot of the hoops and the barriers that I had to deal with.
That kind of sparked two new questions for me. One was, um, can you give a couple examples of the way that you've benefited as a mentor? You said that mentees often enrich um, your own growth or things like that. So what does that look like in your situation?
Well, one example I can give one of my mentees under the URSA program. That's OSU's undergraduate research scholarship arts program that is for freshmen and sophomores or first-time transfer students. Um, we work with undergrads on a research project, and one of the mentees want to work on how do you do STEAM outreach and engagement and education with neurodiverse students because that is what she identified it as. And
Sure.
so that was very helpful because I hadn't had that direct experience with someone with neurodiversity like she had. And so as part of research and dealing with her, I've got to know a little bit better of how to deal with people who identify as neurodiverse. So that's just one example right there. But that was very helpful. And she also helped me understanding youth that I run across through my K through 12 STEAM outreach and engagement who are neurodiverse and how to work with them in the programming that I do.
So kind of gave you a window into a community that you weren't familiar with.
Absolutely.
Do
Yep.
you have any advice for someone who maybe wants to work with the Hispanic community but hasn't done that before? What is a good way to approach that? Say a Hispanic student came to you, not being a Hispanic person, what should I be doing or what shouldn't I be doing in order to form a meaningful mentorship?
Be open, be transparent, uh, be willing to be flexible. Sometimes we deal on a different time scale and clock.
Okay.
um, and there's a lot of cultural elements. So the more you can find out about the culture and the people and the community, the easier it is. And you can start that by just reaching out to communities doing volunteer work or reaching out to peers who identify as Latino, Hispanic, and get their opinions. And be okay with asking questions as long as you are sincere in what you're trying to do. We're pretty open.
Okay. When entering a new relationship, for mentoring, what does that look like? Do you have like a formalized process that you these are the way we approach it? Do you form, a mentorship agreement about expectations, or is it just really each experience is unique when entering in that?
So those formal mentorship programs, yes, we do have a list of requirements. Like the URSA program, the students have to agree to meet once a week for an hour. They have to work on their project 5 hours a week. They have to do some type of a presentation or poster at the end of their 3 month commitment. Um, they're responsible for communications, letting me know if they're not going to be able to make one of the meetings, we need to reschedule. So there's an agreement and they sign it. So that is very much formal. There's certain steps that I have them walk through, like create a LinkedIn profile, create a blog, write down your experiences on the blog, share that on LinkedIn, and I give them homework. So that's very much more of a formal process. Um, for the more informal mentorship ones, it really depends on the person, what they're looking for. And I very flexible. Or if I'm looking for a mentor, right? It's like, I need help with this. When do you have time? And it doesn't have to be in person, sometimes just via emails.
Is that process any different comparing, say, student mentor relationships versus peer to peer, or is it still pretty much the same process for you personally?
Um, Peer to peer is usually much more informal, at least for me.
Right.
The one we did through ACE, which was called Amp Up, um, that had some formality to it. We had a schedule that we could follow if we wanted to, but I really wanted to make it customized to the mentee. And so I asked, where is it that you want to go? And sometimes that's not very clear to the mentee. Sometimes the mentee, you don't know what you don't know.
Sure.
So you have to explore a variety of things. All they know is like, I need some help, and let's start with okay, this. Okay. For example, one of them needed help with some social media stuff. Okay, let's do some social media work. Let's do some networking. LinkedIn. And then that gave them confidence in order to then start doing more of the leadership training. And then we went to leadership training. And in one instance, the first time I did the mentorship program as a mentor through ACE, uh, Tanya Lee Martin from UCNR became a leader the next year, right, within ACE, which was yay, great.
Sure.
If you had asked her at the beginning if she would see herself as a leader, she said, no, definitely not.
Sure.
But working through that mentorship process gave her that confidence to say, hey, yeah, I think I can do this.
Very good. When entering the relationships for mentoring, do you kind of broadly or intentionally discuss kind of the expectations, or is it really just um, an ad hoc process depending on, is it a student, is it a peer-to-peer mentorship? I think sometimes we have this challenge in mentoring where someone comes to us, we say yes, but then either we can't commit as full as we want due to responsibilities. So, how do you go about that process of setting expectations so that both parties get what they need out of that relationship?
So for the formal one, I do like to set certain boundaries as to, okay, when are we going to meet? How often? For how long? What is it, the outcomes that we're looking for? What's your goals? And obviously we can't do everything, so we'll concentrate on maybe the ones we can do within that amount of time. So is it 3 months? Is it a month? Is it a project? Outside of that, I am very flexible. And so you also have to be willing to pivot because sometimes things happen. So this didn't happen to me, but happened to one of my other co-mentors in the initial cohort that we had. Their mentee, um, their boss left and they got promoted, and all of a sudden they were doing something totally different than they initially were when they started the mentorship program. And so they were able to actually work with them um, within that new role. And so all the stuff they had prepared at the beginning was kind of like thrown out the window, and they started again. So being flexible in this day and age is just something you got to do.
Sure. So I know sometimes in mentoring relationships, there's some conflict arises, either if someone's not meeting expectations or vice versa. How do you approach that in a way? Sometimes maybe just cultural misunderstanding, those sort of things. Do you
Yep.
have examples of like where there's misunderstanding and how you resolve that?
Fortunately, I haven't had any major issues. And if it does, it's usually miscommunications. But if there is conflict, I think it's important to be open and have that conversation. It's like, okay, we started this for a reason. Something doesn't seem to be working for either you or me or both of us. Do we need to look at this and say, maybe we should modify this, or maybe we need to end it for the benefit of both of us, right? And so just be truthful about it and see what happens. I think most things can be talked through if you really have that relationship. And part of it is that filtering also at the very beginning to make sure that this is a good fit from the beginning. And that avoids a lot of the problems, right? If you say, I don't know if this is a person I can work with, or vice versa, it's like, I'm not sure I'm the proper person to help you with this, and you refer them to someone else, then you can avoid a lot of those problems.
I always enjoy stories. So do you have any other, I know you already mentioned one, but any success stories that you could share with us about, how mentoring led to growth individual or those sort of scenarios?
So I've had some students that were through the URSA program that initially were kind of shy, introverted, whatnot, and it's nice to see them grow through the process, and in a year or two, or when they graduate, them seeing to go do better things, right? And seeing them posting on LinkedIn and actually being invited to go to talk in front of the Senate, or just really shining, right? And knowing that you had a little part in that. I know I'm not the only one that influenced it, but it's nice to see that they've been able to grow as part of the process of their learning and education at the university. And I had something to do with that, right?
Very good. So I'll just probably ask one or two more questions, but I'm going to be opening it up to anyone who wants to ask questions. You can post it in the chat. I can read it. Um, you can send me a private message, or you can turn your microphone on and ask questions directly to Victor. I think Victor's been very generous with his time and his honesty, and so I'm sure it's a safe place to ask Victor any sort of questions that you would like.
Absolutely.
So another question that I have is, how has mentorship changed over the years?
Well, because of technology, we're able to reach out and mentor or be a mentee uh, from all kinds of people, right? So I think that's one of the major things that has happened. Um, I think some of the programs at the university making it more uh, accessible to students from underserved, underrepresented groups. And for example, the URSA program, right? It used to be, I think, and it still is fairly academic and research heavy. And so URSA, undergrad research scholarship, and then the arts. The arts is what I focus on. So I use the arts to reach underserved, underrepresented youth through STEAM education to um, teach concepts about science, technology, engineering, and math through the arts that are culturally based, right? So examples are Mariachi STEAM Camp, um, uh, Mariachi on Mars uh, program, the drone stuff that I do. It's very much cultural based and music based and arts based. Right now, I'm working on a project with Confederated Tribes of Siletz on using artificial intelligence to introduce technology to Native American youth, but through their culture and storytelling um, traditions, right? And so we're using the arts to introduce technology and artificial intelligence, but it's very much culture based.
Sure. We have a couple questions in the chat. So one question that I received was, have you ever had a bad experience being a mentor or being mentored?
Not so far.
Not
Knock.
so far.
Knock on wood. I've been very fortunate. Again, I think it's part of that initial, talk. So when the kids apply for the URSA program, they interview with you and you interview with them and try to see if it's a good fit. So I don't take all of the students at the interview, and there's recommendations. Um, and you got to make sure that's a good fit. Otherwise, you're doing a disservice to them, right? So um, because of that, and because I choose my mentors, and I really haven't had any major issues or conflicts so far.
Well, another question we had was, you really kind of addressed it a little bit, was what have you found is the best format for the mentoring relationship? Is it in together or informal get-togethers? Is it as needed? Is it just emails checking in along the way? What does that look like? Um,
It really depends on the mentee, at least for me. What is it that they're trying to get out of it? How much time do they have? How much time do I have? And I really like to customize it as much as possible. Uh, Otherwise, I mean, you can get the same training somewhere else, right? And when you're taking formal education, they put everyone pretty much through the same, you know, classes or everybody does the same thing pretty much. And in mentorship, I like to, you're there for a reason. You want to learn something specific or you want to reach a specific goal. And so it has to be very much customized to the person.
sure. Again, if anyone has any questions, feel free to either message me, turn on your camera, unmute your microphone, ask it directly. I have one more question. As I've shared in the chat, that the Extension Foundation, myself and others have been building a mentoring platform. This platform is there to help find mentors, to be a mentor, and to find and share resources about mentoring. What is your advice if we're trying to grow this into a very robust national platform? How do you get that institutional buy-in? Because at some level, you have to get the institution to buy in if you're really going to grow rapidly and to really reach more individuals through this tool. So do you have any advice in that space?
Yeah, I think it's important for people to make the time, space, and the commitment. A lot of time we hear it from leadership, you know, you got to learn, you got to make the time. And it's like, but okay, great. Do you allow me for that time? Right? Is there time for me to do it where I'm compensated, not just doing it outside of work hours? I mean, put your money where your mouth is. And uh, it's to their benefit.
Sure.
Because if you have people who are growing and doing that professional development, and they will increase not just their production and their programming and success, um, but their satisfaction, and that's huge. I mean, especially in academia, we can't compete with the private industry, right? And so you have to look at other benefits. And I think one of the biggest benefits that we have at the university is a lot of that professional development, letting people go to conferences, encouraging them to take time to learn or go visit another university and just learn from others. What are best practices? What works? What doesn't work? Right now, everyone's talking about artificial intelligence. Okay, are you giving people time to play around with that? Are you bringing in people to show and teach about that? So you have to give those opportunities. Um, we have an annual conference here for extension, and we have folks. But then there's webinars. We do regional trainings. We'll go out and do presentations, do trainings for people on platforms, on technology, on Drupal, social media, on talking to the press, communications, you name it. You have to do that and be very proactive. But you can't wait for others to provide that for you either. I think it's incumbent in ourselves to actually go looking for that. And those who do, those are the people that increase their worth and their satisfaction.
Right. Improve job satisfaction. In some ways, it can improve retention if you have a really supportive environment at your institution, where they devote time and resources sometimes.
Right.
It's great.
And so also, well,
Available.
there's also that I think internships is a way of mentoring. And so I think it's incumbent on Extension to provide that for students, not just college students, but high school students, because those are the future Extension workers, right? Or
Sure.
researchers that we need, educators. And that has to start early. I don't think we do enough of that. I think it's a shame that we actually have students graduating from land grant university who don't even not know what extension is or does. And so we need to step up and do mentorship and not just the academic side of things, but also the outreach side.
We had 2 more questions just come in. This person asked, what advice would you give a new mentor who's just getting started with a identified mentee? So, they're motivated to be a mentor, sounds like, but maybe they're not fully confident in what that process should look like.
Well, congratulations for taking that step, that first step. I mean, no one knows everything, and you got to start somewhere. So start with what you know. Ask a lot of questions. Find out what is it that the mentee wants, and which ways you can help them. And if you can't help them, if you can point them to resources or other people that can help them with that. So you're not the sole, everything I say is law and the right things. You have to take things with a grain of salt. It's like a lot of mentorship.
Matt, are you still with us?
I'm still with us. I don't know if
I think Victor froze.
Yeah, I see that. We'll give it a minute or two.
See, I think I froze for a little bit.
You froze for a second.
All right. So I think I was saying that, I'm sharing my experience, my knowledge, my skills, and that may or may not be relevant to the mentee. I mean, some of it will because, they sought me out or they matched us up together somehow. But being able to be open about that and say, this might be helpful, but it might not, and take it for what it is.
Very good. One more question that we got here is, how do you maintain a boundary between mentoring and your own self-care? So I know some individuals sometimes have an overabundance of mentoring opportunities. They really want to give back, but that also comes at an expense for yourself, right? Because you're giving so
Sure.
much of your time. So what is your approach to that, or any advice you could offer?
Yeah. So for my formal ones, like the URSA students, I never take more than 2
Okay.
per year, and then one other formal one. At this moment, I'm not taking any other, peer or near peer formal mentorship ones because I got so much stuff going. So you have to be able to say no. I'm happy to do informal mentorship. I'll do a half-hour call here and there. Um,
Sure.
Outside of that, yeah, you definitely have to set some boundaries and know what you're capable of. And you don't want to be a disservice to the mentee.
Sure. I think maybe you froze again, but I think often knowing our own boundaries and limits, and if you don't have the capacity at any given time, it's all right to say no, or to direct them towards maybe someone else who maybe can be a mentor for them. Hopefully, Victor.
Sorry about that. It would have to happen to the person that works on broadband issues, right?
There's certainly that for sure. So, we
Okay.
got another question that just came in. What do you do if your mentor wants you to take a certain approach, but you and others feel the some other way is the correct way? Do you say no, or how do you approach it? So it sounds like one of those situations or some sort of disagreement about maybe handling a difficult situation. I'm not sure, but what are your thoughts on that?
I think ultimately it's the mentee who decides if they want to follow the advice or not. You can't force people to take your advice. You're not their boss.
Right.
And I can say I think that might be a misstep, but you do you. I can only give you advice. I can't tell you exactly what to do. And that's
So,
part of the learning and experience, the growth. It's like, okay,
right.
maybe they'll learn from that. You just have to let it go.
So the last call for questions. I'll just give it a couple seconds here. Either post anonymously or in the chat, and then I will wrap it up. But thank you, Victor. It's been a great pleasure meeting with you, sharing with you. Encourage everyone to check out the extension.mentoring.org website. We're looking for mentors and mentees, and so this is a tool meant for everyone. Hopefully, Victor will join us on that website and promote it with his students, share resources, share his ACE program, other programs like that. We can, create a collection of all these mentoring resources that are there. But I encourage y'all, as I said, to consider joining us in that aspect. And we also hope to see you next Wednesday when we host Continued Growth and Capacity Building at 1994 Tribal Land Grants. This will be by the Dean of Continuing Education, Brian Kowalski, at the College of Menominee Nation. And I hope you all have a great afternoon or morning, and please bring a friend next time. So again, thank you, Victor, and thank you all. Appreciate it. And stay tuned for more opportunities. If you have a suggestion for someone, for a speaker, you're welcome to reach out to us. If there's enough interest, we can continue this series throughout the year, just depending on the level of engagement that we receive. So I'm getting a lot.
Thank you, Matt.
Yep. Getting a lot of thank yous in the chat. If you don't